Beth, we're really excited that you're here, and welcome back to Bridges. Beth and I are going to have a little bit of a conversation. We're going to have a little bit of a time this morning to get to know Beth a little bit better. But before we do that, we're already putting Beth to work, okay? So all of the kids, because Bridge Builders is on a break, so I'd like for all of the kids to come up front here. Beth has something she wants to show you and a story that she wants to tell you. So Andre, come on up. Makana, yeah, there's some seats here and you can come sit on the floor. You can sit on the little ramp right here if you want. And Miss Beth's gonna come down and tell you a story. Come on up, yeah.
Amazing.
Woo, look at this.
Yes, so many. I love it.
Yeah. Come on up, guys. You can sit on the floor. You can sit on the ramp right there.
I'm going to need some help with my story, so I'm hoping that you're going to be able to help me out. Fabulous. Find a space. Come and sit. And if, obviously, any adults or children at heart, if you want to join in too, you are more than welcome to participate. Fabulous. I think I might actually stay up here because we're filling up down here. Okay. Fab. Amazing. Okay. So, as Pastor Dave said, my name's Beth, and I want to just chat to you really, really quickly about something that I've brought with me. So, as you know, you could probably know, it's nearly Christmas. Put your hand up if you're excited for Christmas. Just the kids? No adults excited for Christmas, no? Okay, good, good, good. So I'm really excited too. I'm a little bit delayed and I haven't put any of my decorations up yet. So, yeah, I know, right? So I went to put these up and they don't work. Pressing the button, nothing's happening. Any ideas? What's wrong? What's gone? How am I going to make my Christmas lights work? What do I need to do? At some point I will learn names. At the moment I don't know them. Go for it. Oh, intelligent. These kids are intelligent. Right, there's a plug. Hang on. I might need some help. Can you help me out? Can you just plug that in there? Ah, there we go. That's what we needed to do. I needed to plug my Christmas lights in. Otherwise, they don't work. So, Christmas, we're celebrating what? Who can tell me? What do we celebrate at Christmas? Jesus being born. Fantastic. And Jesus, as Talita told us earlier when she was doing her talk, her reading, he was described as Jesus being the light of the world. And we can celebrate Jesus being the light of the world. But we can also be that light. Put your hand up if you know somebody, maybe it's a friend at school, maybe someone at work, maybe somebody in your family, who doesn't come to church. Who doesn't know who Jesus is? Just one, two, okay. Yeah, a couple. Now, we're called as Christians to go and tell people about Jesus. We can be the light for other people. But what do we need to do in order to be that light? In order to make my lights work, what did I need to do? Plug them in and turn them on. And so for me to be the light to other people and for you guys to be the light to other people, we need to be plugged in. We need to be plugged in to God. That's a weird way of saying it. Anybody might be able to guess how we can stay plugged in to God? Because he's not a socket like this that we can physically put in. Any ideas? What do I need to do? Maybe some adults might need to help us out here. Yeah, when we've got real lights, we do need to plug in the cables, but I don't have any cables to plug myself into God. I can't physically plug myself into God. What can I do to know more about God so that I can share that with other people? What do I need to do? Oh, that's a great answer. I need to worship him. I can come to church and I can worship him. What else do I need to do? Go on. preach. Yeah, maybe Pastor Dave, Pastor Marstello, people standing at the front can preach. But in order to be able to preach, what do I need to do beforehand? What does Pastor Marcel and Pastor Dave need to do before they preach? How do I know God better? Go on. I need to read the Bible so I can come to church and I can worship. I need to read the Bible. What else do we need to do? One more thing that I'm thinking. Pray, there we go. So we need to read our Bibles, we need to pray, and we need to come to church so that we can stay connected with God and so that we can be His light in the world and tell all of our friends about how special Christmas is because we're celebrating the birth of Jesus and how that Jesus has saved us and He has loved us so much. So thank you so much for helping me out. There are some coloring sheets for you to be doing whilst I'm talking here at the front. But thank you very much for helping me out.
Guys, you were great. You can go back and sit with your mom and dad. And Bridge Builders is going to start back up after the new year, okay? Your teachers and Miss Beth will be back after the holidays. Beth, have a seat. We're going to just be kind of casual tonight, or today. And we're really glad that you're here, Beth.
Thank you.
And I have given Beth these questions in advance, but I also told her that we may go off script a little bit. You just never know. But I really want you all to know Beth and to know her heart because she really is a special person. And I believe that God has brought her to be here with us. So Beth, you're flying to the UK tonight.
Yep.
And what are you most looking forward to about being home in the UK for Christmas?
So the thing I'm most looking forward to is seeing my parents. It's been 13 months since I was last in the UK, so I'm very much looking forward to giving my family a hug, giving my parents a hug, seeing my sisters. One of my sisters is currently on her way to Australia, so I won't get to see her until January. But I am very much looking forward to seeing them and giving them a big hug when I get back to the UK and just spending some quality time with them.
Yeah, great. And what does Christmas Day look like in your home?
Yeah, so for us, Christmas Day is the 25th, so in the morning we'll go to church. I've already been signed up to do the readings. My pastor in the UK is already on that. After church, we'll probably open some presents, and there'll probably be a time for a dog walk whilst my dad is making the Christmas dinner. My auntie and cousins and their children and family will be coming over to have dinner with us. And then we'll probably just spend the rest of the day eating and watching films and just hanging out as a family and spending some quality time together.
Good.
Yeah.
Christmas in the UK sounds kind of like Christmas in the US, and probably Christmas for a lot of you. So Beth, if you had a Wikipedia page, I don't know, do you have a Wikipedia page?
I do not, no.
If you had a Wikipedia page and we clicked on early life, what would it say? Tell us about your growing up.
Probably say something along the line of Beth Marshall grew up in a small town in the UK called on the Wirral near Liverpool with her parents and her two sisters. She enjoyed going to school, reading, dancing, and each Sunday going to her church, which is still her current church now. I went to Sunday school, went to holiday clubs, that kind of thing with my family. And spent a lot of time with family and grandparents, enjoying the outdoors, being forced to go on walks outside. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Great, great. Sounds like a pretty normal childhood.
Yeah, very fortunate to grow up in a loving household.
Except for that enjoying going to school. I can relate to the rest of it. Yeah. So you mentioned church as being a part. Tell us about how you came to know Christ, because I think a lot of times we grow up in a Christian home maybe, but at some point our parents' faith needs to become our faith. So how were you first introduced to Christ? How did you come to know Christ? What did that look like?
Yeah, so like I said, I grew up in a Christian family. I'm very fortunate to have grown up knowing about Jesus and going to church and going to Sunday school, learning about Bible stories, singing songs. So I was really fortunate in that sense that that's something I grew up with. And my parents and particularly my grandmothers, were really strong in their faith, and so I always had that influence around me and have people praying with me and for me. So I was really fortunate in that sense. When I was maybe like 6 or 7, we went to it's like a conference for families in the UK, where there's seminars and workshops and kids clubs. And I think that was the first time there was give your life to God kind of situation. And so when I was 6 or 7, I made an official kind of commitment of I wanted to follow Jesus, and that's what I wanted to do. Again, being 6 or 7 didn't make a huge amount of difference to what I was doing. I still went along to church and still enjoyed that. And then maybe about 13 or 14, with our youth group at the church, went to a summer holiday camp, a summer camp. And that was the first time I kind of met a lot of other young people who believed the same thing. My church was quite a small church, not as many people in the youth group. And so having that experience, it was like, oh wow, other people believe this too. That's pretty cool. It's not just a random thing that we do in our little town in the corner of the UK. And so that was a really great experience for me, and that was where I first met with the Holy Spirit and really had that encounter with Jesus and had that faith, and that's where I then gave my life to Jesus then, and my faith became more real to me then. It was something I wanted to do, and something that was for me. It wasn't what my mum and dad told me to do. My mum and dad weren't at the camp. It wasn't what someone else told me to do. It was what I chose to do. And I had some really great mentors along the way. My youth leader at the time then what we would call discipled me. So she basically met with me a couple of times in the month to talk about faith and the Bible and how I was doing. And so that was really good and really important for me to grow. Yeah.
Great. So how old were you at that point?
I think I must have been about 13, 12 or 13. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't think in being a Christian for over 50 years, being in ministry for 40 years almost now, I don't think I've met any Christ follower that their journey just continues in an upward straight line. Thanks to Lita. It goes in an upward kind of A to B to C to D. In fact, I was looking back at a text message that I sent you on, I think it was June 24th or maybe July 24th, asking you about what your plans were. Yeah. And you said something about going back to the UK. Mm-hmm. Evidently, God had other plans in mind. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey from 13? I'm sure it wasn't just upward and onward straight.
Yeah, no, for sure, definitely not. From 13, being a teenager, grew up in the church. Again, like I said, it was a small church. There was me and my 3 close friends that would go to church, but I was trying to make an active decision of I'm going to go, not just because mum and dad are telling me to. Both of my sisters at that point had decided to stop going to church, or I wasn't going just because my friends were going. It was something I wanted to do. But I didn't really share it outside of the church. It was Sunday, and that's what I did on a Sunday, and then I didn't really tell anybody else anything about that. When I went to university, again, when I was choosing which university to go to, I didn't really consult God about it. I didn't
really. I think I more prayed like, this is what I want, please make it happen, rather than actually saying, okay, God, where do you want me to go? Where is the best place for me? I kind of looked at how close it was to my house, what the campus was like, whether I liked it, and then when it came to getting results, God, this is where I want to go, make it happen. So I did get into the university that I was hoping to go to, and I knew I wanted to find a church when I got there. But as most people who are here who've known, moving to a new place, whether it's a new country, a new city, wherever, is really hard.
Yeah.
And so I personally really struggle with like, I want to make friends with people quickly. Like, I don't want to be on my own. I don't want like people to not like me. And so I focus more on like my housemates and my friends on my course, rather than like being plugged into a church and finding church friends and Christians who are going to support me in that faith development. So I visited a couple of churches, but it wasn't until one of the other girls from the Christian Union was like, oh, wait, you actually go to church, that I was like, oh, hang on, something's gone wrong here. This is not the plan. I wanted to be living out my faith and be in church, but I hadn't realised quite how much I'd veered off from that until she pointed out that she just didn't even realise that I went to church. So from that, then I joined a church, a Vineyard Church in Nottingham, where I was at university. And again, I had some great people who came alongside me, supported me, and it was a great opportunity to understand why I believed what I believed, and whether it was a tradition from my church or a tradition from my family, or whether it was biblically based, or why was I doing what I was doing, and did I want that, and so it gave me an opportunity and a space to question what I knew and what I believed and what I thought. And then that was the church where I got baptized. So in 2015, when I suddenly realized that you didn't have to have it all together and know exactly what you were doing to get baptized, that's when I got baptized in 2015.
Great. I think it's wonderful when we come to that realization that God meets us where we're at and not where we think we need to be.
Yeah.
So good. At what point did becoming a teacher kind of enter into your thinking?
Yeah, so I, from a very young age, knew I wanted to be a teacher. I knew that's what I wanted to do. Both my parents were teachers. They're now retired, so they very much tried to discourage me to become a teacher. They knew what the challenges were, and so they, as much to their, not dismay, they were proud, but much to their warnings, I still wanted to teach. I did then, however, when I was choosing my university course, panic that maybe I didn't want to teach forever, so I chose to do a different undergraduate course first, and then as my postgraduate course, trained as a teacher. So I always knew I wanted to, but then panicked on the way.
Yeah. Well, I think this is an honest statement. Everybody that I've met in Brasília that knows Beth as a teacher, formerly at the British school, which you were there for 3 years, every single one, the child or the parent said something to the effect of, Miss Marshall was my favorite teacher. And we have met strangers in restaurants that we've started chatting with. The British school comes up, and oh, do you know Beth Marshall? Oh, she's my favorite teacher. So you must have heard God's voice correctly, when you chose to be a teacher. And at what point did Brazil, how did you get to Brazil? That's a question people ask me often.
So when I panicked about not wanting to, but maybe I wasn't going to be a teacher forever, I decided to do a course that I just enjoyed studying the subject. So I chose to do English and Hispanic studies. So because I enjoyed doing English literature and Spanish at school. And the course I chose was, if you already knew some Spanish, you had to learn Portuguese as a beginner. Okay, great, another language, why not? But you could drop it after the first or the second year. But I carried it on because I enjoy learning languages. And then as part of that course, you have to spend a year abroad. So I spent 3 months in Portugal, 8 months in Spain, and 3 months in Brazil. And yeah, that was my first contact with Brazil. So I was living and working in Rio, in a favela in Rio, working in a school there as a volunteer. And it was great. I loved it. It was just amazing. And I do remember saying to my mum that, like, that would be my dream job if I was going to be paid for it. Unfortunately, as a volunteer, you don't actually ever get paid for that. But no, it was a really great experience. Then I came back to the UK. I trained as a teacher. And I don't think huge amounts about it. But I worked in the UK. I managed to get a temporary contract for a year, and then another temporary contract for a year. And then I knew that temporary contract, there wasn't going to be another one. And so I decided that I was going to move abroad. I was going to find a job teaching abroad. I'd always fancied doing that for a little bit. So I wanted to go somewhere I spoke the language. So South America, Spain or Portugal. And the 2 jobs I found was one in Sao Paulo with the British school and one in Brasília with the British school. And the one in Brasília, they offered me the job first, and the head teacher, I connected with her better in Brasília, and so that's how I ended up in Brasília. So even when I panicked and didn't know what I was doing when I chose my course, it was pretty obvious that God had a plan, and I did that course for a reason, otherwise I wouldn't have ended up here.
Yeah, so I think what I hear you saying is that between Spain, Portugal, and Brazil, Brasilia's the best. You just don't answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you came to Brasília at the kind of the height of COVID in 2020, and you shared in part of the interview process, you shared a story about how you ended up at Bridges, and I wondered if you could share that story with the rest of them.
Yeah, so I got the job in February 2020, and 2 weeks later, everything shut down. So I didn't even know if I was actually going to make it to Brazil because the whole world just shut down. Thankfully, again, God was good at work in that. I managed to get the visa, I managed to get the flights, and I managed to get to Brazil. At that time, church was all online, so I was watching the service every now and then, and I was watching my home church service every now and then. So I Googled churches in Brasília, and I'd found Bridges and a couple of others, so I'd started watching Bridges online. And then it got to about October time, and churches had started to open up, but you had to book a spot to be at the church. So you had to book your seat because there was restricted numbers. So I was like, okay, great. So I booked a seat at Bridges, and I booked one for a different church as well in Brasília. And then like that week I was meant to be going, one of my close friends caught COVID, and at the time I then had to isolate until I could be tested and tested negative. So I knew I wasn't going to make church. And I couldn't find anything on any website that like let you cancel your booking. So I was like, well, I don't want to take a space that somebody else could have. So I ended up emailing both of the churches saying that I wasn't going to be able to come. So saying that I wasn't going to be able to come. The first church replied saying, okay, no problem, it's fine. Again, nothing wrong with that response. But then Bridges replied saying, okay, no problem. We hope to see you some point, something along the lines of, if there's anything we can do for you, let us know. It was like a genuine response. I think the other church, there was nothing wrong with their reply. It was just the way it was. They probably had hundreds of emails, whereas Bridges was more personal. They genuinely had read the email, genuinely understood what was happening, and genuinely wanted to help. And so yeah, the next time after I tested negative and all that, I booked to come again, and and then I stayed.
Yeah, we're glad that you did. How many of you all were here in Brasília at Bridges during COVID? Yeah, there's several of us still around, right? You remember, I had totally forgot about that whole thing where you had to make a reservation to come to Bridges. And I just think that it's neat. Here we are 4 years later, 4 years later, and God used used COVID and used having to make a reservation to go to church as part of Beth's journey that brought her here to us for those 3 years. And now here she is back. So I'm really grateful that how God works in mysterious ways, right? Even when we don't know what's going on or what is going on, we don't particularly like, God is still at work. So you were here in Brasília for 3 years. What did you do between leaving and sitting here today?
Yeah, so after the 3 years at the British school, the contract was coming to an end, and I knew that it wasn't really what I wanted to renew that contract, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. Like I said, I'd always kind of in my mind wanted to go abroad to work with children and help in some way, and I remember even being like 16, 17, looking at volunteer projects to go and work in an orphanage or go and help out somewhere in the world. So there was one particular mission organization called Latin Link. I couldn't tell you when I first heard about them, probably in one of the summer camps I'd been to throughout the years. But I knew a couple of people who'd done projects with them. One of my friends who was attending this church, he'd done something similar a couple of years ago. So I thought, okay, it'd never been the right time. After university, I trained as a teacher. After I trained as a teacher, I got a job. After I got a job, it'd never been quite the right time. So I thought, okay, well, I don't have an obvious next step after working in the British school. So let's have a look. So I got in contact with some of the team from Latin Link. They work all over South America and in Europe. And there happened to be a family who live in Anápolis, which is about 2.5 hours from here in the state of Reais. And so this was around maybe like April, May last year, 2023. And so they invited me to spend a weekend with them at their missions conference at the seminary that they lectured at. And they also said, oh, we've got a project here that we think might be interesting for you with your like skills and experience you've had. And it's a children's home, so an institute for children who can't live with their parents for various reasons. And so, yeah, I came back to Brasília after that weekend. I wasn't 100% sure. I didn't know where I fitted into that role of what they had going on there. But I kept in touch with Latin Link, and then when I left here in July 2023, I started the application process with Latin Link, and the kind of only project that seemed to work out for the time, place, and experience was this place in Anápolis. So in November 2023, I moved to Anápolis, and I spent the last year working there in a children's home, primarily working with the teenage girls, but also teaching dance to the little ones, hanging out with the little ones, teaching English in a Christian preschool once a week, studying at the seminary every now and then. So I've been there since 2023, so November 2023, and spent the last 13 months with them in that way.
Yeah, good. So shortly after Sharon and I came back from our sabbatical, and then subsequently, many of you know my mom passed away. We went back to the States for her funeral, came back, and it was one of those Sundays just after I had come back. And Beth was here, and I hadn't seen Beth in, I think, a year or so. And so good to see you. And I don't know if I've told you this, but in that moment, I felt like God spoke to me about Beth and just being open to what might be next for her and her life. And so I asked her that question. She didn't really know, other than it involved going back home to the UK. But then I was here one Saturday. I had been praying for a week about whether or not to approach Beth to give consideration to this staff position. because I don't like messing with people's plans and their hearts. But I also want to be responsive to what God's speaking to me. So I was here at the church on a Saturday, and I usually spend time praying for you all on Saturdays. And I said, God, I'm going to be praying here for the next 2 or 3 hours. And unless you say something to me like, do not reach out to Beth, I'm going to text her when I'm finished praying. And that's what I did. I think that was July 27th, looking back. And just asked you, would you consider having a conversation? And so I wondered, what did you think when the opportunity to come back to Bridges was first presented? I'm just curious what your thoughts were.
Yeah, like you said earlier, I was pretty set on the fact that I was going back to the UK. I'd been praying and thinking about what I was going to do after this year, because I knew that the placement I was on was just for a year. And so I knew it wasn't quite the right place. I wasn't staying on there for longer. But in my mind, I was going back to the UK. I would buy a house. I would settle down somewhere and find something to do. And so in my head, that's what the plan was. And then you messaged me. It wasn't like a straight away, instantly. I knew, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and this is exactly what I've got planned. Again, many of you who have lived abroad or are living abroad, I've been away from home for 4 years at that point, and I was quite looking forward to being closer to my parents and closer to my family. But at the same time, I didn't know what I was going to do in the UK. I didn't have like a job lined up or a particular desire to go back into teaching in the UK. So I was excited about the thought and the opportunity. It's a new role. I get to come back to Bridges. One of the most difficult things about leaving the contract with the British school was that I was going to have to leave Bridges. And so that was really exciting to think, okay, I get to come back and I get to be involved in what's going on there. But at the same time, I was quite apprehensive. I know we talked about me not feeling qualified for the role, and it's something new, it's not something I've done before. And also having to make that decision of whether I was going to be willing to be away from family for a long period of time. So I think it's I say like the whole month of August I spent praying, fasting, talking to different people. I have some great mentors and friends who advise me in everything I do to help me decide what God was saying to me. I've joked with a couple of friends here that I really wanted like a burning bush moment. Like God just really tell me exactly what He wanted me to do when. Didn't happen. And I'm not one of those people who an audible voice of God saying, okay, or a vision of this is where you're going to be or what you're going to do. But after some time, I was speaking to a friend, and I didn't tell her that I was thinking about the job because I didn't want her to turn around and say, don't do it. And then that really made me realize, oh, actually, hang on, this is what I want. And this is what actually I do want to be there, and that's the desire I have. She didn't say don't do it, actually, she was very supportive. And one of the scriptures, one of the verses that I found really reassuring is Psalms 37, 4 to 5, which is, I've got it written down somewhere, but along the lines of God will give you the desires of your heart. And I think often it's read as you'll get everything you want. But actually when I studied more into it, it's more like God will put what the desires are into your heart. And so maybe in July I wasn't 100% certain that's what I wanted, but through that time for August, God was working in me so that I wanted to be here and I wanted to take part. I wanted to take on the role. And so, so apprehension, excitement, but I'm really, really excited to be here.
We're excited about you coming back. And, when you're so confident that God's in something, it just gives you a peace, right? And a certain expectancy. And that's how I feel about Beth. Beth is not the only person that we considered for this role. We had another very good candidate as well. But over time, God made it very, very clear to our leadership team that Beth was who he had for Bridges. And I think Beth is uniquely qualified. She doesn't feel particularly qualified because maybe she doesn't have some formal theological training, although she's begun pursuing that. But I think about your cross-cultural abilities and your experiences, that you know Brasília, you know Bridges. Beth is a fluent Portuguese speaker, by the way. Are you dreaming in Portuguese every once in a while?
Sometimes, yes.
Yes, so she's even dreaming in Portuguese. That's when they say you really have taken hold of a language. So Pastor Marcelo, Raquel, now Beth are all fluent Portuguese speakers. When I hear you all speaking in Portuguese together, I know that you're talking about me because I don't speak Portuguese. But we're just glad that God's brought you. Beth's title is Director of Children's Ministry and International Relations. Not only is she going to be working to develop our children's ministry programs, and you saw all of the children up front here, and half of them are traveling now. So the children's ministry, Bridge Builders, has grown, and I believe that God's brought Beth to help it grow to the next level. And she's also going to, as we want to be more strategic about engaging the diplomatic, the international community, the faculty of the international schools, students that are here. And Beth has already begun thinking about some of the ways that we can do that more effectively to serve the international community here in Brasília. So I'm just very expectant for what God's going to do in your life and through your life. And my last question is simply, what do you need from us? How can we be praying for you? Is there anything before you come back at the end of January that we can do to help you?
Yeah, praying for like practical and logistical things. So I was on a volunteer visa. First I came on a work visa, then I was on a volunteer visa. I'm currently on a tourist visa. So having to get a potentially third different type of visa, and praying for that to go smoothly, the right documents and that to go through, praying for that would be great. Also for accommodation when I come back in at the end of January, beginning of February, I'll need somewhere to live. So praying for that kind of guidance and of to where's a good place to live and finding the right place that's going to be home while I'm here. And yeah, prayer for wisdom as I take on this role. Like I said, it's something new for me. It's new for the church, and I want to be able to do it well. So prayer for wisdom on how to do that would be great. And be patient with me. It's new, so I will want to get to know lots of people and hear what you have to say. But yeah, it will take some time.
Yeah. Well, they've had going on 12 years of being patient with me, so you're going to be easy. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're working with some people to secure Beth's visa. We're hopeful that's going to be a religious visa, which would be, I think, the best option. So pray that that happens. Beth comes back on January 31st, and she's going to need a temporary place to stay for maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks while she's looking for a permanent place. We do have some options for you, but if you would like to add to those options, maybe you know of a place that could house Beth well, safely and comfortably for 2 or 3 weeks, let me or Pastor Marcelo know that as well. I'd like for us to take a moment to pray for Beth, and I want to invite you to stand if you would. And if there are some of you who have been close to Beth in the past and would like to gather around her on stage and just place your hand on her. We're going to pray. So please feel free to come and join. I know Beth was a big part of the young adults and also the fusion ministry, children's ministry. If you're excited about Beth's coming, would you give her a round of applause as part of a welcome? Let's pray together. Father, thank you so much that you have a good and perfect plan for our lives. And you have a good and perfect plan for Beth's life. And part of that plan has included bringing her back to Bridges and to Brasília. And I'm so expectant about the girls and boys whose hearts are going to be touched through Beth's life. The men and women, the parents, the people who come and go at Bridges who are going to be impacted by Beth's life. We're just really grateful, Lord, not only for the history that we share, but for the future that we look forward to sharing together. I pray, God, that you'd keep her safe tonight as she begins her travel back to the UK. I pray that her days with her mother and her father, her sisters, would be sweet in every way. I pray that their days would be filled with laughter, with the making of memories, the sharing of slow and good conversation around the table. I just pray that their time together as a family would be really special, and that you'd bring Beth back at the end of January to begin a time with her spiritual family here at Bridges. We ask, God, that you take care of all of the specifics, her visa, the place that you want her to live, the neighbors that you want her to have, the possibility of getting a driver's license, transportation, all of the things that you know Beth needs, friendships. We just ask, Lord, that you would provide for her in every way and help us to be the church family that you need us to be and that you know that she needs. Help us to be gracious, patient, loving, accepting. I pray, God, that as Beth gets to know us, we would make ourselves available to be known to her. And just so thankful again. As someone mentioned to me last week at the news of finding out that Beth was coming back, they joyfully exclaimed, "This is like a Christmas gift that Beth is coming back." And it really is, and we celebrate you're giving her back to us for whatever season that she's here. Bless her and keep her safe along the way. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Thank you again, Beth, for joining us. We're going to take our morning offering. You all don't have to stand here on stage unless you're part of the worship team. But it's an opportunity for us to give. Thank you so much for those of you who regularly support the work at Bridges. And like we said earlier in praying for Steve and Susan and the church that's being started in Madrid, and Roberts and Everlyn, and the work that is being done in Nairobi, our gifts make a difference around the world. And one of the things that God likes to do is to take our little and make a lot. So I just want to encourage you to continue to give and support through your generosity the work of Bridges. You can bring your offering forward. You can use the QR code on the screen to give. But let's most importantly give our worship so that we can stay plugged into God, right, and light up. So let's worship